Mr. President.
Senator from Delaware.
Mr. President, I've come to the floor this afternoon to speak about our budget and how the choices we will make over the next few days reflect our values and priorities. As someone who has had to myself, as a countywide elected official, write and balance budgets, I've long viewed them as not just a collection of numbers and programs, but also really a statement about our basic values and a reflection of what we hold dear. We can say we believe in this or that, but at the end of the day, our budgets tell the true story. And over the last 2 years in this body, following the hard work and the leadership of Democratic Senators Patty Murray and Barbara Mikulski, previous chairs of Budget and Appropriations Committees, we've taken important strides to stabilize our government's finances, invest in our middle class, and protect the most vulnerable among us. After a few really hard years, our economy has begun to heal and to grow again. We are now in the longest period of uninterrupted private sector job growth in our nation's history, a period in which our businesses have created 12 million new jobs. Today, our national unemployment rate stands at 5.5%, and our deficit has fallen by nearly 2/3 since the depths of the Great Recession. And at a time when economies around the world are steadily slowing down, ours remains, relatively speaking, a global bright spot. Mr. President, we need to continue on this path. We need to invest in this growth. And in my view, this is the wrong time to hit the brakes on our economy's resurgence. Unfortunately, the budget proposed by Senate Republicans misses the mark and would, I fear, reverse many of these gains. It denies our basic values by balancing the budget on the backs of the poor and middle class, while cutting investments essential to our nation's competitiveness and future. It relies on some budget gimmicks to actually increase defense spending while making broad cuts elsewhere, and uses overly rosy predictions about growth in our debt that have time and time again proven false. And it does all this while protecting tax breaks for the very wealthiest and corporations at the expense of working families. It is my hope, Mr. President, that we can reach a budget that is responsible, balanced, and fair, that takes stock of our needs today and what the future will demand of us. So I'd like to take a few minutes and outline broadly what I think our budget priorities should be. First, we need a budget that preserves our social safety net by building a circle of protection around the most vulnerable among us and protecting the promises that we have made to our seniors. Part of the basic bargain we make in this country is that when one of our neighbors falls on truly hard times, their country offers a hand up. So we need to ensure these basic protections to health care and food and a home are there for those of our neighbors in deepest need. It's also part of that same bargain that after a lifetime of work, you'll be able to retire with dignity and some security. As workers, we all pay into Medicare and Social Security, and we need to ensure that as future generations of Americans grow up, raise their families, contribute to our economy, the benefits they've spent their lives paying into will be there for them, just as they were for previous generations. Yes, we should have a conversation about how to responsibly bring our long-term health care costs under control. But we can't do it the way this budget does by irresponsibly shifting costs to seniors and the poor. For retired Delawareans, for instance, the Republican budget would reverse an important reform in the Affordable Care Act and would raise prescription drug costs by an average of $1,100 a year. Second, just as we are there for each other when times are hard, we must rebound and grow together by making specific and thoughtful investments in our future. We need a budget that understands that without critical investments in infrastructure and research and science, our economy will struggle to grow and to support a strong middle class. We need a budget that invests in our middle class and gives working families a fair shot, an economy that is built on growth and opportunity. These investments in growth are the basic building blocks of our economy. They make up our economic backbone and help create an environment for our nation's drive and dynamism to flourish. Growth, however, requires infrastructure. We have a roughly $3.6 trillion infrastructure debt, investments in infrastructure that are due by 2020. And every year we put off investing in our roads and bridges and tunnels and ports. Every year we fall behind our competitors. We make it harder for our businesses to grow and create jobs. Growth also requires investing in research and development. Our long-term competitiveness depends on our ability to innovate faster than our competitors. And although our businesses already invest a huge amount in R&D, the federal government plays a critical role through our national labs, through the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, and other grant programs that either directly invest in or incentivize the research that leads to innovation. Finally, growth in our country requires ensuring that every child has access to a quality education. It requires making it easier for families to send their kids to college and easier for young people to manage the costs of their college through managing student loans after school. And it requires strengthening the real connection between the classroom and workplace so education can be a sturdier rung to a longer ladder of opportunity. Throughout our history, our middle class has thrived and our economy been strong when we make these sorts of investments in our economy and our middle class. We need a budget that continues those investments. Finally, Mr. President, we need a budget that lowers our deficit responsibly in a way that's fair and forward-looking, not done on the backs of the middle class and the poor, and not done in a way that kills jobs and stifles growth. Over the last few years, we've done a lot to get our deficit under control, using about 3/4 spending cuts and about 1/4 increased revenue. We've also benefited from a steadily growing economy, which has lowered our deficits. As we move forward, we need balanced deficit reduction that preserves investments in our future and our promises to each other. That will mean raising some revenues by asking the wealthy and corporations to pay a bit more, just as it will mean making hard choices over the long run about the true causes of our deficits and debts. But let's be clear, we can do this while investing in our future and keeping our promises to our seniors, to our veterans, to each other. The best way to lower our deficits is to grow our economy, so we need to invest in that growth. After all, an airplane needs its engine to take off, even into strong headwinds. Mr. President, over the coming days, we will be voting on a wide series of amendments that will say a lot about our values and priorities. And I'd urge my colleagues to keep in mind that which has always powered our economy and will continue to into the future, an economy that gives families a fair shot and invests in the strength and opportunities of the middle class and those fighting to get into the middle class. That's how we build an economy. And I hope we'll dedicate ourselves to a budget that will help us do so far into the future. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.